All right, two things I wanted to talk about in the gaming news world this week. Yes, of course, I have seen the Tony Hawk news, the stuff that's been trickling out. Thank you to some of you guys for sending that to me, but I'll talk about that when it's announced. Believe me, I'm getting ready. Unfortunately, we got to talk about some downer news, and that is the state of things. You probably heard by now, you've probably seen a bunch of other people rant about it. Warner Brothers is closing 3 game studios that they had under their umbrella, and they're canceling the long-awaited Wonder Woman game. They're closing the mobile game-focused Warner Brothers San Diego. They're also closing Player First Games, the studio behind Multiversus, which they absolutely bungled there, and they're closing Monolith Productions, the folks that were working on the Wonder Woman game, but also is just a legendary studio with a pretty big pedigree. So to even dive into this, obviously, like what has already been said or how some of you guys probably feel, right? It's just big, dumb corporate mismanagement. And I've said it before in other videos where you look at companies like this where it's like they have a bunch of good stuff. They have cool shit. You know, they have Wonder Woman, they have Superman, they have Batman. And yet they're like not giving us any of that. They could barely even handle the movies, let alone the games. It's like, even look at Harry Potter, $1 billion franchise for them. It took them so long to get on a real, actual, proper Harry Potter game that people then ended up really going for and buying. And for me personally, like as a movie person too, like I look at some of the Warner Brothers stuff as beyond just the gaming. It seems like it has been a cancer of like the top corporate mismanagement, not understanding what they have for a long time, from silly shit like them making movies, like an incredible like half animated, half live action Looney Tunes movie, canceling that, to making like a DC superhero film, like a Batgirl movie completely, and it had Brendan Fraser in it, my boy, and they canceled that completely, to Space Jam 2 just being like the absolute worst example of like IP, like member berries bullshit ever. Look, I know some people make fun of Ready Player One, but Space Jam 2 was like the real bad version of Ready Player One, where it's just a bunch of properties, just a bunch of things. Hey, remember this? Look how cool it is that they're all there. So I look at that. I look at Warner Brothers having this treasure chest of cool stuff and just not getting it. So now with the developments here in the gaming world, I also just can't help but feel like it's like you look around and you're like, how is anything even really happening anymore? Right? Like with a lot of these big studios, it feels like all of them are like playing safe bets because they're hanging on by a thread. And it just feels like it's all just this big house of cards, this big, you know, charade. I don't know, at any moment the bottom could fall out. And I say that as somebody who's like paying attention to the industry, yes, but also someone who's just sitting around waiting for cool stuff to play. That's it, man. That's all I want. And I have plenty of stuff to play. There are still plenty of good games out there. There are some good AAA games sometimes, but there's a lot of good indie games, AA games. There's plenty of stuff. But like as a person who does enjoy all the shit that Warner Brothers is sitting on, I'm just like the John Travolta Pulp Fiction meme, just looking around waiting. And it's frustrating. So I really wonder, like, I feel this time it feels different, like, especially like with players and just people watching and reacting to this news, just kind of being like, what gives with all of this? Like, what is the systemic problem here? The shareholder stuff, the corporate stuff, the, you know, like pursuit of endless greedy profits at the sake of just making something good and interesting. I don't have the answers for you guys here. Like, I'm not going to speak like that, but the sentiment, it seems like, is that like Warner Brothers head of like interactive and software type stuff, David Haddad, is leaving. And from what I've seen, like with the news reported now and with Jason Schreier, the reporter who scooped all this, and he did some interviews, it does seem like the sentiment is that this was the Band-Aid ripping off and now they might be on the right track. But you look at it and it's like the damage is done, right? Like if you can't get a Wonder Woman game out the door, it's a tricky property, I know, but still, it's a DC, it's a superhero thing. There's plenty of people, myself included, who are suckers for that. Not to mention the fact that it's also just like, it was a massive waste of money. Like how long did they spend working on this thing? A waste of people's time, their life, their resume, and money. It's just really frustrating to see, but I also can't help but just look back at Monolith Productions. And that's where this really stings for me personally as a fan of their games. And that's what makes me finally kind of go, all right, what the fuck? What is going on here with all this? I mean, that, of course, also the fact that like how badly they bungled Multiversus, which was actually good. I played it the first time it came out, and just how they launched that, how they relaunched that. was just, to me, so mind-numbingly dumb and confusing, especially for the average consumer. Like, who cares? And then they just closed the studio down, a studio that they bought because it was a big bet on Multiversus. Good job, guys. But yeah, to go back to the Monolith thing with them, it sucks because of that thing as an institution, right? Like what they've put out. And I know people are always very quick to say like, well, it's not the same studio you remember when you were younger. Different people work there. Yes, that is the case. But with Monolith, it seems like a lot of people had worked there for a very long time, with a lot of the leadership only leaving in like 2021, according to reports. Hey, now next up, before we keep going, this video is sponsored by Bombas. We've talked about them before. They provide really, really good socks. I'll say that. Look at these bad boys. Specifically, I have always worn bottom of the barrel socks, whatever I could find, and they would fall apart. They would fall off my feet, an absolute mess. Where Bombas is different is their commitment to quality. These socks are just so comfortable, but the material they use is so good. And along with that, they offer underwear, t-shirts, and stuff like that, and all their stuff is committed to good design quality. No annoying itchy seams or tags. It's like, it just works, but for socks. They have socks for every occasion, indoor, outdoor, whatever. They have taken over my household. My wife and I wear them all the time. And of course, Bombas is still committed to their policy of one purchased equals one donated. Bombas makes the top 3 most requested clothing items for homeless shelters. That's socks, underwear, and t-shirts. And they donate an item with every purchase you make. At this point, they've donated over 150 million essential clothing items across a network of 3,500 giving partners in all 50 states. So if you want to experience some good quality socks, they have a happiness guarantee as well. All you got to do to check it out is click the link in the description down below. It's bombas.com/onjake for new customers to get 20% off their first purchase. Just be sure to use code ONJAKE20 at checkout. There's a QR code up here if you want to scan it, get started. You can do good and feel good when you purchase with Bombas. And again, it's bombas.com/onjake20 for new customers to save 20% off their purchase, and just use code ONJAKE20 at checkout. A big thanks to Bombas for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Regardless, whichever way you want to spin it, the people there or not, the institution, the name behind the thing is responsible for so much, for early like Windows PC games in the 90s to they actually developed the Matrix Online. Are you kidding me? They were also the No One Lives Forever guys, like the cheesy first person shooter that like some of us weren't allowed to play because it had a sexy lady on the cover. We played it anyway. But also Condemned: Criminal Origins, one of my favorite first person horror games of all time. The sequel, the fact that they made the Fear games. These are the guys behind Fear, a first-person shooter that like really moved things forward, kind of like a Half-Life. I know that sounds extreme, but Fear was a really big deal. They were making cool, weird, murdery shit for a while, but things kind of started to change direction. They did Gotham City Imposters, a kind of competitive Gotham City themed first-person shooter. It seems like in today's day and age, people would say that's like live service garbage, but I actually liked that back in the day. Me and my buddy Andrew played that more than we realized. But then, of course, in 2014, they moved on to Shadow of Mordor, which was an incredible game. I absolutely love that game. Here's a video of me 10 years ago talking about it. Like God of War, it's the first time in a while in a game you just feel the absolute anger of the main character coming through your controller. Is awesome. Yeah, I'm still doing the same shit. But 2014's Shadow of Mordor was incredible. The Nemesis system, everything, right? It like really felt like it was the start of great things to come, a big new franchise. Then, of course, a couple of years later, Shadow of War, which they eventually ended up fixing, but they bungled that one big time with like the microtransactions and the state of the way it launched. And then there's Wonder Woman, which I'll admit, like, even when it was announced that they were working on it, I was like, I like those guys. They make cool games. But I was also like, how are they going to make a Wonder Woman game? I don't know. It's tough. It's tricky. Like, it's hard to even imagine how a Wonder Woman game would really go down, how they would do it. Would they implement the Nemesis system? And according to reports, it seems like they did have a hard time trying to figure this all out. So look, man, I can only just talk nostalgia and talk about old games I used to play. That's all I'm good for on this thing. I'm a hack. But at the very least, all I can say is that with this one, and I know like there's always news articles and videos about studios shutting down and laying people off. And honestly, a lot of times I see players comment and go, I don't care, just make games. People lose their jobs all the time. Okay, but I'm hoping this time around, maybe people start to realize and question the whole thing, the systemic nature, the corporations themselves, the ones specifically that are hoarding the things that we love and bungling it, completely messing it up, just fumbling the bag, so to speak. There are so many other studios out there that are doing it right. Marvel is starting to get wise to the fact that they shouldn't develop their games internally. They should find the right people for the job and contract them out. China is a growing video game industry in the AAA market. Japan, of course, for years and years and years, they've, of course, made plenty of mistakes, but they're not doing massive fuck ups like this. At least, I haven't really heard or talked or reported on one in a while. I just hope people can walk away with this from a consumer advocacy standpoint at the very least, watching these corporations with an eagle eye and questioning what they do with things we enjoy and not necessarily trusting them. I'm Mr. Positive. I am always happy to celebrate things. I love things. I try to really enjoy and like stuff as much as possible because life is short, but with stuff like this, Jesus Christ, man. Next up, speaking of what corporations have to say, Konami has announced a partnership with Bloober Team. Bloober Team is the developer, of course, behind the Silent Hill 2 remake, something I was skeptical of, but that remake turned out to be pretty good. They did a really good job. We now know that Bloober Team is working on another thing with Konami, that they have officially signed an agreement. We just don't know what it is. From the studio, and I quote, "The trust built upon the success of Silent Hill 2 laid the foundation for signing another agreement for a new project. The deal aligns with Bloober Team's strategic plans to expand its internal development division within a first-party framework." Although details of the project remain a mystery, it is confirmed that the game will be based on Konami's intellectual property. Konami will continue as both the publisher and rights holder of the game. So this, of course, leads to a lot of speculation of what is it? What could it be? It says specifically just a new Konami IP, something based on Konami IP. That could be Silent Hill, more Silent Hill, or it could be something else, one of the other various things Konami is sitting on. But I think obviously the safe bet and what makes sense is more Silent Hill. I think for years now, Bloober Team has kind of pitched themselves kind of been the pick-me person of proving themselves to be a Silent Hill creator. Obviously, the medium before that felt heavily Silent Hill inspired, and then Silent Hill 2 now, they prove themselves. So I expect, a lot of people are expecting, is it going to be a Silent Hill 1 remake, a Silent Hill 3 remake? I don't know for sure. There's also speculation that maybe Bloober Team should be the one to make a completely all new Silent Hill. I don't know how I feel about that. Sometimes I think they present their stories really well. Sometimes I think they don't at all. Would I like to see a new Silent Hill adventure? Yes. We know that there are some things in the works, but from Bloober Team specifically, I don't know. Maybe they're going to end up being the remake guys. I only say that because it does feel like Konami literally looked at Capcom with Resident Evil and went, oh, we should do that. From Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta to Silent Hill 2. I don't know. Especially Silent Hill 2, how they remade it, how they tweak things, it just feels very much like they're aware. So that's why at the very least, I think with this deal, this agreement, their next thing they're working on, it might be another remake. What remake will it be? I mean, if you want to get weird and creative, The Room would be great, but I think it's probably more likely going to be a 1 or 3 situation. 3 has a lot of love. 3 is iconic, but I've said on this channel before, man, I like Silent Hill 1 a lot. The thing is that Silent Hill 1 remade in the 21st century might feel a little too close to Silent Hill 2, so maybe from a marketing standpoint, maybe they will want a Silent Hill 3 remake because it can stand out and feel different and fresh. I don't know for sure, but at the very least too, Bloober Team is still working on their own things. They have that Chronos, The New Dawn, sci-fi game. I believe that's coming this year, and I'm curious to see what the heck that's all about. Anyway, those are the 2 things I wanted to talk about this week, just kind of ramble on about. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you have a favorite Monolith Productions game? There's got to be one. You've definitely played one, so hit me up. Also, in terms of just how Warner Brothers is bungling it, I don't know. I'd love to hear your insights because I talk off the cuff here. I talk without notes. So I can only say so much. So I definitely want to know what you're thinking. But let's talk about this stuff. Let's talk about what Bloober and Konami might be making next. Do you think it's a Silent Hill 1, a Silent Hill 3 remake? Or something else? Let's talk. If you like hearing me yap, I really appreciate it. I'm just talking about stuff I like, stuff I find interesting, even though sometimes it's bad news. This kind of sucks, but clicking the like button does help me. Thank you. You can find me on all the social media places at Jake Baldino. They'll be linked in the description down below, but thank you guys for watching. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me. See ya.